Yo, what's good everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be breaking down some of my favorite GPP plays for this Week 1 NFL DraftKings main slate. But before we dive into my spreadsheet here, if you could like this video and subscribe to the channel, I would greatly appreciate that. Now let's go ahead and take a look at these GPP plays. Alright, so we're going to kick things off here in the spreadsheet like we always do. In the top left-hand corner with those highest implied game totals. I actually mentioned this in my cash video yesterday if you want to go check that out. Definitely some high scoring potential here this week and a handful of games that could really turn into a shootout. And then I got the highest implied team totals listed behind me there. And you can kind of use that as a reference point as I'm going through some of my favorite GPP plays here today. And for those of you who are new to this video, what we do is we kick it off with a couple of my favorite game stacks. We'll then dive into some of my favorite individual plays and stacks, and then wrap it up there with a low-priced option or a sub-4K wide receiver play. With that being said, let's dive into these game stacks here. And one of the first games I have my eye on is that game between the Minnesota Vikings and the Green Bay Packers. Right now, this game has the fourth highest implied game total this week, and honestly, it might be one of the more popular games in general, but on this 13-game slate, from what I'm looking at right now, ownership does look pretty evenly spread out, so I'm not too concerned about that. Cousins is projecting below 10% ownership. Justin Jefferson will likely be pretty popular, but that's why I got guys like Sammy Watkins in this build here, who's projected around 1.5% ownership, making my lineup a little more contrarian. So what I got here is Cousins stacked up with Jefferson, and then I'm running it back here with Aaron Jones and Sammy Watkins. Aaron Rodgers is still Aaron Rodgers, back-to-back MVP, and he's going to get his guys the ball. Now, Sammy Watkins has notoriously actually played very well in week ones. He just tends to get hurt later on in the season, and I mentioned this in my cash video yesterday as well. Aaron Jones could legit be locked into 5 targets in this game and could see close to 10 targets. He's going to get a lot of volume thrown his way in general this year. So this is the build that I kind of like here, but a number of different options that we could roll with. Adam Thielen on the Vikings side of things, Irv Smith, and Dalvin Cook is a really nice pivot as well. He's only projected around 6% ownership, and you can see him as an individual play below. Now on the Packers side of things, I'm probably going to stick with Watkins and Jones for the most part. I do think A.J. Dillon is interesting, as well as someone like Robert Tonyan, but I'm pretty much going to stick with Jones and Watkins for the most part. You know, looking back to 2018, these two teams have played each other 8 times, and in those 8 games, they've combined for 37, 41, 43, 47, 50, 58, 65, and 77 points. So definitely some high scoring potential in this game here come Sunday. And then another game stack I'm going to be targeting here this week is that game between the Chargers and Raiders. And right now this game has the second highest implied total on this main slate. Definitely some shootout potential between these two teams, but surprisingly, not any one of these guys is projected to be super high owned. And I kind of just mentioned that with that stack between the Vikings and Packers. Ownership is pretty evenly spread out here this week, but I definitely would have thought this would have been a game that might carry a little higher ownership, and as of Saturday morning, that really isn't the case. So in this stack here, there's a number of different ways that we could approach it, just like that game between Minnesota and Green Bay, but I like Justin Herbert stacked up with Mike Williams and Joshua Palmer. And Joshua Palmer would probably be my preferred low-priced option over Paris Campbell, but obviously I put him in the stack here, so I wanted to give you a couple of options, but a 23-year-old wide receiver number 3 in this offense that Justin Herbert couldn't stop talking about this training camp. I do really like his upside, not just this week, but in general this year. I have him quite a bit in my season-long leagues. And then running it back there with Darren Waller on the Raiders side of things, we could do that with Devontae Adams, or if you're looking for someone with really, really low ownership, that could be Hunter Renfrow for you. Alright, now hopping on down here to some of my favorite individual plays and individual stacks. I'm going to kick it off there on the quarterback side of things with Tua, and I mentioned him in my first look video earlier this week as one of my favorite GPP quarterback plays. And you could stack him up with Tyreek Hill and or Jalen Waddle. I'm probably not going to get too cute outside of that, go with his top 2 wide receivers. In a matchup here against the Patriots that I'm really not too concerned about, and I talked about this earlier this week as well, this is still a solid Patriots defense. I understand that. Bill Belichick has made this defense a top 12 defense for years on end. But they're also missing J.C. Jackson, their best cornerback, who went to the Chargers this offseason. He had 8 interceptions last year. And so I really don't mind the matchups this week here for Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. I'm actually going to talk about Tyreek in just a minute here. But he hasn't been double covered since 2018 by the Patriots, and has the 5th best wide receiver cornerback matchup on this week 1 slate. So yeah, I like Tua. I like Miami in general. I like their defense a lot and think that that Patriots offense could make quite a few mistakes this week, and especially with a new offensive coordinator. But yeah, I like Tua here at this price, and relatively affordable to stack them up with guys like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Now moving over here to the running backs, and the first 3 guys that I got there, you'll notice are top tier running backs in this league, and you probably wouldn't think they'd be overlooked in week 1, but with Jonathan Taylor and Christian McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley for that matter being pretty damn popular here in week 1, these 3 guys make for nice pivots as top tier running backs. First guy I got there is King Henry in a good matchup at home against the New York Giants, who couldn't stop the run all of last year, ranking 30th overall in rush DVOA. He'll probably be more popular than Cook and Kamara, for sure. Delvin Cook, actually, I know that for a fact, but he does make for a nice pivot off of CMC and Jonathan Taylor. Now, Delvin Cook, I kind of name dropped him earlier when I was talking about that game stack between the Minnesota Vikings and the Green Bay Packers, but right now his projected ownership is only around 6%. There's no reason that should be the case, so he makes for a great pivot really off of any one of those top running backs. And then Alvin Kamara there also has a really good matchup on the road against the Atlanta Falcons, who couldn't stop the run all of last year either, and ranked 31st overall in rush DVOA. He is projected around 10-11% ownership, but I know his name is starting to float out there a little bit more, so if his ownership continues to creep up, I'd love to just pivot to a guy like Delvin Cook and or Derrick Henry, but as of right now, AK looks pretty good as well come Sunday. And then wrapping it up there with Antonio Gibson in a good matchup here against the Jacksonville Jags. He's back to RB1 with Robinson on the shelf right now, and if he gets anywhere close to the volume that we saw towards the end of last year, both running the ball and in the passing game, he could make for a really nice play here at this price of $5,800, and a guy, in my opinion, that could have 4 or 5x upside. We then got the wide receivers here, and I already talked about Tyreek Hill, but just want to reiterate, I really do like this price. Easy to stack him up with Tua, and again, he has not been double covered by this Patriots team since 2018, and per FTN has the 5th best wide receiver cornerback matchup on this week 1 slate. So yeah, I like Tyreek Hill, like Miami in general. On the tournament side of things, not going to touch him in cash, but Tyreek's always one of those guys that should be on our GPP radar, considering his speed and upside. Next guy there then is Brandon Cooks, and this is a guy that I believe has 10+ target upside this week in a game they're likely playing from behind from start to finish against the Indianapolis Colts. And I do like this matchup as well for him against cornerback Brandon Facyson, who allowed a 61% catch rate last year to opposing wide receivers and a 107 passer rating. Brandon Cooks is still very talented and should be able to win this matchup pretty easily. Next guy I got there then is Brandon Ayuk of the 49ers, and I loved the chemistry I saw between him and Trey Lance during training camp and preseason, and really after week 9 of last year when he got out of the Kyle Shanahan doghouse, we really saw Ayuk take his game to the next level, and weeks 10 through 18 last year, he actually led the 49ers with a 22% target share and 27% of the team's air yards, and has a really good matchup this weekend to expand and continue on that against the Chicago Bears. And then wrapping up the wide receivers there with Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and there's a number of different ways we could approach not only this team and the Chiefs, but that game between them and the Cardinals. 53.5 implied total. It's going to be a popular game to target. But I'm sure we all saw what Patrick Mahomes said earlier this week, that fantasy owners aren't going to be happy with the Chiefs' offense this year in terms of finding the right guy. He said it's going to be a new guy every week that blows up. Now, Travis Kelce is Travis Kelce. He's solidified, but he's also projected to be the most popular tight end on this main slate. So we can go with one of the wide receivers here in MVS. I do like him, listed as wide receiver number 2, got great speed, and if he gets open a few times, doesn't take much for him to meet value at this price. Juju also has a really nice matchup in the slot, and I don't mind that price either at $5,200. You could go with the guy in McCole Hardman, who's been there for years now, but really hasn't made a name for himself. or the rookie in Sky Moore, and I don't believe anybody's going to be on him. So, yeah, it's probably a dart throw to find the right wide receiver in this offense, but I kind of like MVS this week. And then I got a couple of tight ends for you in TJ Hawkinson and Evan Ingram. Yes, I absolutely think that Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, Darren Waller, obviously, Kyle Pitts, those guys are in play probably most weeks. So I probably don't need to talk about them all that much. Yes, I will put them on my spreadsheets when I really, really like them, but kind of pivoting off of those top tight ends this week. Now, I talked about Dallas Goedert in my cash video, really like him as well, but on the other side of that game, I like TJ Hawkinson too, and he's kind of flying under the radar against an Eagles secondary that struggled against tight ends all of last year, allowing 17.5 DraftKings points per game to the tight end position. That was the second most in the NFL. So Hawkinson here, kind of a guy that's flying under the radar, and I really like his upside in this matchup. And then a dart throw tight end for me is Evan Ingram. This could be a bounce back year for him, in my opinion, with a brand new team in the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, Trevor Lawrence loved to throw to O'Shaughnessy early on last year before he got hurt, and we kind of saw it with Parham when he got traded there towards the end of the season. So I think Trevor Lawrence could target Ingram 5+ times in this game, and a pretty good matchup at that against the Washington Commanders. Do keep an eye on the weather on the East Coast this week. It looks like there could be some rain, but if there's sunshine come Sunday, Evan Ingram at $3,500 could be a dart throw for me at the tight end position. Now, when it comes to the defenses in my tournament lineups, I am not afraid to spend a few extra dollars on a defense. Not something I do in my cash lineup. I talked about that yesterday in my cash video. So the Saints and Bengals are two teams that kind of stick out to me this week if I wanted to pay up for a defense. We got the Saints on the road here against Marcus Mariota and an Atlanta offense that we don't know what it's going to look like. Yes, Kyle Pitts is there, and Cordero Patterson had a great year last year. We don't even know if Drake London is going to be healthy here in week 1, so Marcus Mariota has not been a starter for a handful of years now, and that New Orleans defense has some playmakers on it, so I don't mind paying up for them, and you could even do a little running back defense stack there with Alvin Kamara and the Saints. I also don't mind paying up for the Bengals either, because they're going to be playing Mitch Trubisky this week. I think that's all I need to say. And then we got the Miami Dolphins there. I talked about them in my cash video as well. You know, new offensive coordinator for the New England Patriots. We saw Mac Jones make some mistakes in the preseason, and I think that could carry into the early season here. So I like Miami in general. I like them at home this week. Probably going to be a little heavier on them than I should be, but yeah, the Dolphins here at $2,600. Sign me up for them in my tournament lineups. And as always, going to wrap up the spreadsheet here with a low-priced option or sub 4K wide receiver play. And I did mention this early on in the video. If I had to pick one guy in the 3K range at the wide receiver position in my tournament lineups, that would likely be Joshua Palmer. Talked about Wan'Dale Robinson for the New York Giants in my cash video. Think he's in play, but kind of like Paris Campbell as well for the Indianapolis Colts. Listed as the slot wide receiver right now, but we know he has that deep threat appeal. We've seen it in years past, at least when he's healthy, and that's always a concern for him, is can he stay on the field? And he really didn't do much in the preseason this year, but reports in training camp were positive with Matt Ryan. Yeah, it's week 1. We really don't know what to expect. I know there's people out there that have all these projections. It's week 1. There is so much uncertainty heading into this week. We're kind of throwing some darts here. And I like throwing a dart on Paris Campbell, who should run a route on about 70% of Matt Ryan's dropbacks this week, and is a great pivot off of Michael Pittman, who very well could be the most popular play on this entire main slate this week. All right, everyone, that is going to wrap up this video here for today. As always, thank you all for taking the time out of your day to watch the content here on this channel. I got a lot of football content coming your way this year, so make sure you stay tuned into that. But in the meantime, let's have ourselves a great week 1 here, folks. Let's win some money as well. I'm out of here.